welcome to the video. Thank you for being here. I'm super excited to have you here and to be able to talk about psychedelics because it's a really fascinating topic, and especially if you're trying to use it for personal growth, for like spiritual development, if you want to become more creative, more open. There is so much potential. There's so much you can do if you know what you're doing and how to work with them, you know? So we're going to talk about that today. I want to give a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I have some experience in shamanism and energy healing. I have a master's in psychology. Like, I know some things but I'm not a doctor. So I guess I'll start with the benefits, like why people even want to take psychedelics, what the benefits could be, especially if you're trying to heal or grow. And the most basic one, I think, is reaching an altered state of consciousness, right? And at its most basic level, that just means like experiencing the world in a different way than you normally do. If you're really depressed, right? And you're really having trouble, like, shifting your way of looking at the world in that moment, you're so stuck in seeing the world, like you literally cannot see an alternative, and you sit with mushrooms, let's say, right? You can almost zoom out, like, because you're altering your state, your perspective, your lens, you see things in a different way where you're just like, holy shit, like, actually, in the grand scheme of things, like, this thing really doesn't matter. If you're really stuck, it could be so many things. It could be like you feel really unhappy or frustrated with your life. If you broke up with someone and you're having trouble, like, really moving on. If you lost someone, you know, if someone you loved died and you're just like, oh shit, like, they're gone. How do I even process that? Altering that state of consciousness with psychedelics can be really helpful. But I will say this, when people have bad trips, really, it's just them resisting facing themselves or them resisting whatever the experience is giving them in that moment. So that's why I'm, cautioning that if you're not ready to do that yet, and that's fine, like, I really don't think, in my opinion, that if you're not ready to not push yourself and do it, like, I know some hardcore, like, people who are like, no, do like a hero dose, a really high dose of mushrooms, sit with yourself and like have an ego death, and then you're gonna be like a whole new person, which is true, right? But that's a lot. Like, if you're not ready to actually face those things or to change your life, sometimes it's kind of hard. Like, you almost have to live the situation you're in and see that it doesn't work, or get so fed up with it that you're like, fuck it, like, I'm gonna do something else or shift. Like, sometimes it's until you can't be in that situation that you're almost forced to shift your perspective. So life will force you to do that at some point anyway. With psychedelics, you can almost like consciously go in and say, okay, I'm gonna sit myself down with myself and like, let's look at the shit I have going on, like, let me figure out what is the root of a lot of this stuff that doesn't feel good, that is not working in my life, and I'm gonna sit with it and experience it and heal it, I know a lot of us have depression and anxiety. I have struggled with depression and anxiety for a while, and at this point I kind of have realized, like, it's something you have to learn to manage. It doesn't really ever go away, and I've had a lot of like spiritual teachers in my life even pointing that out. Like, so much of mental health and well-being is just learning how to frame things, right? And healing the things that trigger you, those issues you have. With depression, anxiety, PTSD, a lot of these things, tools like MDMA have been super effective. Like, they actually have done a few studies with MDMA and people who have PTSD, and the results have been amazing. It's kind of like MDMA, it releases serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, right? So it's just, you're just like open and relaxed and loving and confident. So it alters your state of consciousness, right? It puts you in this place where you're so open and loving that you can face some of your really heavy, deep, scary, dark shit, like, if you have abuse, if you had like some crazy childhood trauma, if you have like resentments with your family members, if you have insecurities, if you have fears, like really high expectations, you feel lost, you feel lonely, whatever it is, there are so many things, right? But from that open, loving place, you can almost look at those things that you look at regularly that freak you out. From that place, you look at it and you're like, you know what? I think I'll be okay. Like, I think it's gonna be okay. It can be really helpful to like view it from that place, you know? I mean, come on, if you're like a veteran with PTSD, right? Like, imagine some of the stuff they go through, that trauma that they're carrying. Like, if it can help you deal with stuff like that, then another aspect of working with psychedelics is experiencing that aspect of like play and self-exploration and creativity, right? It's not a coincidence that like you have, you know, even people like Steve Jobs, in the people in tech, like some of the innovators that can see things in such a different way, say that some of the things they've come up with have been while they've been using like psychedelics like acid. Acid actually is a huge one if what you really want to do is, you know, become a little bit more creative. The con here though, or the thing to be aware of in my opinion, I think a lot of people who are looking for that creativity, especially with drugs like acid and ayahuasca, DMT, they can almost get greedy about that knowledge or that expanded perspective that they get on it. So they start to feel like their creativity can depend on it. You know, LSD isn't going to kill you, but if you use it a lot and you use really high doses and you don't give your brain the time to like bounce back and integrate what you're learning, you could get a little lost. It's hard to explain what that looks like, where they're just almost like, I almost feel like they didn't fully come back. I almost feel like they're almost permanently in that altered state of consciousness. That's like something to consider, you know, because it can be amazing to think about, oh, these other worlds and dimensions and shattering the illusions of reality and society and all these things. But if you still have to live in the society, if you still need a job, if you still need to like participate in the matrix, you still have to be able to function, you know? So if you get lost there in that world, it can be hard to function here. That happened to me. I went to Peru. This was like almost like 5 years ago. And I did an ayahuasca ceremony. I, you know, thought I really prepared myself. I thought I was ready. I really wanted to grow. I wanted to like find my purpose and find the truth, right? And I thought I knew so much. Like, I was so arrogant at that point. Like, I really thought I had the world figured out. So, you know, when I tried it, it was like, oh, like, that's cute. You think you know? And it just totally was like a psychic ass kicking. It was a lot. It was a lot. Don't get me wrong. It was beautiful. It really made me who I am today. But I came back from that experience to like a fall semester at school of college. And it was almost like 3 days after coming back, right away I had to go to school. So to go from like, oh, I'm in the jungle in the Amazon, like experiencing these other realms and like facing my shit, to like, oh, and now you're back in the real world, you know, like go be normal, and like your illusions just got shattered open, but now you have to go and pretend to be normal. That's a lot. So just FYI with that too, because it would be a shame, you know, especially if you feel like your art or that creativity that you're looking for, the reason you're doing it is part of what you want to share with the world, like part of why you're here. If you get lost, you're not gonna be able to do that, you know? Something that can happen if you like keep working with psychedelics in a healthy way, where you have your intention, you have a safe like set and setting, people are taking care of you, you prepared yourself, you're using it in a healthy way, like with the intention of growing, right, and healing, of getting rid of those traumas, those things that like weigh you down or affect you. You know, as you keep going, you start to feel like lighter and lighter almost. You get to know yourself so much better. Like, you know these different aspects of yourself because you know yourself in an altered state, right? It's like one more way of knowing yourself, especially if you can almost see yourself from a third like person perspective, right? With certain psychedelics, like sometimes with LSD, with DMT, with psilocybin. So over time, if you keep doing that, which is a commitment, right? It can be fun, it can be beautiful, but there's gonna be like some work you have to do in each trip. Over time, it can be really, really amazing for your like personal development, your healing, your spiritual connection, your overall well-being, you know? And that's why I personally really recommend lower doses. Like if your main goal really is to heal and feel better and grow, if you just keep doing smaller doses and give yourself time afterward to like integrate, okay, what did I learn, how did I experience this, like how am I going to now shift that little thing in my life and adapt, over time, you'll make so much progress. With ayahuasca, they say one session of ayahuasca can be like 7 years of therapy in one night. But on the other hand, 7 years of therapy in one night, like, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot to integrate, you know? So I think that's where you have to be a little honest with yourself. Like, what kind of person are you? Are you the, you know, hey, sign me up for the 5 a.m. boot camp, I'm gonna like whip myself into shape in 2 months? Or are you more of like, I'm gonna start jogging, you know, and then I'll slowly start adding in weights, and you like to slowly pick things up and reach your goal that might be more grounding for you and better in the long run. Some people need to just dive in and do it. So this was like a really, really broad, vague video. Please let me know in the comments, you know, what specifically do you want to know more about? I really want people to share that. I hope this was helpful in some way. I appreciate you being here. Comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye.